Continuing production of The Open Mind has been made possible by grants from the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation, the Bluestein Family Foundation, the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, Carnegie Corporation of New York, the Russell Sage Foundation, the Malkin Fund, May and Samuel Rudin Family Foundation, the Center for Educational Outreach and Innovation at Teachers College, Columbia University, and from the corporate community, Mutual of America. I'm Richard Heffner, your host on The Open Mind, and this is another of our Golden Oldies, marking the series' golden anniversary. Now, I actually first met today's guest more than 4 decades ago when she was still researching what became her now classic challenge to women's lot at mid-20th century, the feminine mystique. Betty Friedan had not only contributed much to the birth of feminism in America, she had nurtured it intellectually, helping bring it to what she later wrote of as its second stage. When we did today's program, a dozen years ago, Time magazine had written that her new book, The Fountain of Age, would, quote, do for the image of older people what she did to dispel the feminine mystique. And I asked her why she had written that, quote, again, the mystique of aging is much more deadly than the feminine mystique, more terrifying to confront, harder to break through.
You see, we absolutely have no image of age in America, except deterioration and decline from youth. Age as a problem, a terrible problem and burden for society. Age should be denied. Age should be denied as long as possible, surrounded by a miasma of dread, and the image of age only is nursing home, only is Alzheimer's, senility. So people, they want to deny it. They want to deny it. And there is no image at all that fits the reality of the new years of human life that people now have beyond 50, beyond 60, beyond 70, even beyond 80. The lifespan in America in the course of this century has given us these new years. The average life expectancy of Americans is now over 75. For women, it's nearly 80. And if you are already 60 or 65, as we are, then your life expectancy is even longer. And these, for the great majority of people, will be healthy years. And they will be years that we can live vitally in the community, love, be productive. But there's no image of that. There is no image of that. Just senility. So we deny age. We try to give the illusion of youth as long as possible, have our face lifted 5 times, look like a mummy, not young, but like a mummy. And not even if we really buy that obsession with youth, that denial of age, that dreary, dread mystique of age, then we don't even let ourselves know the new possibilities that are evolving in us as we grow older. We don't let ourselves live our age as fully as we might, freed, liberated from the strictures of our youth.
But isn't there something self-defeating as the search for the fountain of youth, in the search for the fountain of age? Isn't there some quest for something that can never really be?
I don't agree with you. The fountain of age is a very deliberate title because the fountain of youth denies the possibility of age. You cannot be young again. You cannot be young again. And why should you want to be? Does life peak at 25? Is there nothing good that develops in people as they go along in life with experience. I wouldn't want to feel the way I felt at 25 again. If I could be 25 and know what I know now and feel what I know now, that would be a different matter. But I can't be.
A continuing refrain in our generation.
What?
That's a continuing refrain in our generation.
What?
Just exactly what you said. You wouldn't want to be 25 again now unless you were as wise and as experienced then as now.
But it's futile. It's futile. But the fountain of age is not futile. In other words, you have to break through, just as women had to break through the feminine mystique, to see the new possibilities of life for women and for themselves, and to define themselves as the people that they are. Take off that girdle, you see. So the blinders of this dreary, dread age of mystique, it's so, if we get rid of that, then we march into the uncharted territory. There's no road maps, there's no rules, there's no role models, and as no other time in our life. It's up to us. But you have to be able to not get stuck by the sort of the false syllogism, the no-win proposition. You have to love the way you loved when you were 30, or you don't love at all. You have to work the way you were worked when you were 30, or you don't work at all. You have to have the power you thought you needed when you were 30 or 40, or you're utterly powerless and passive. You have to break out of all that and then see where you really are. What I'm trying to do, and it's not unrealistic, is to say, let us look at this period of life, these new 25 years that people have that they didn't have before, as a unique period of human life. The things that are important to human life continue to be important, but you don't have to love the way you loved when you were 30. There may be new possibilities of intimacy and love that don't fit those youthful models. Your sexuality doesn't have to fit the measures that Kinsey took that peaked before for your sex, that peaked before they were 30. You can be freed of that, macho, mandate. Your memory even. I mean, the research that I cited shows that if you give 17-year-olds and 70-year-olds memory tests, that if it's sort of unrelated words, numbers, lists,
right,
school stuff, those 17-year-olds do better. But when you give meaningful material, the 70-year-olds do better because they get it whole and they slough off the irrelevant details. In other words, your intelligence, your emotions continue to evolve. I don't use the word old, I say growing older, and there's no denial in it. And there's a sort of a openness and a readiness to experience this new period of life for what it is. It's full of surprises, not free of pain, but you can continue to be vitally living your life as the person that you more and more are, because all the research in my own interviews show the one thing happens to people that continue to evolve and develop in their later years. You become more and more authentically yourself.
What do you mean? I know you say that in the book.
Yes.
What do you mean, authentically yourself? Weren't you authentically yourself when you wrote The Feminine Mystique?
I know, I certainly was. I mean, the deepest part of me, And a process that really began then of throwing off the false masks. But that continues. I mean, it's such a liberation, just as it was a liberation for women to say that all I am, I will not deny. That began for us, man. But for men and women, not to have to live up to the false or no longer even true or possible mandates and masks that we carried with us from youth, free of the games, free of the pretenses, free of the illusions, free of the strictures and restrictions, to sort of fully be ourselves. And then it comes together more, comes to be all of a piece more. That, not talking about a psychoanalysis that goes back to your age of 4 and all that, but you finally outgrow some of those things, and the pieces of you come together, come together. For instance, I have a very good friend, a man, and he says, and he's very vital. He just had his 80th birthday. He says to me, he's had divorced, second wife, and he said he can't have sexual feelings, and he's a very sexy guy, about a woman anymore unless he really likes her. Big news, that's the way women, have been more all along. But you become more that way. And so that, for instance, there's a crossover that takes place, the research shows. Men develop the side of themselves that's been suppressed because it's supposedly feminine. Women develop some side of themselves that's been suppressed because it was supposedly masculine. And so you become a more whole person. And you have, when I was interviewing the frustrated suburban housewives all those years ago for the Feminine Mystique, I talked about problem that has no name, remember?
Right.
When I talk to the women coming into age, and the new men that are not, that sort of surmount the terrors of forced retirement and all that, and become more fully themselves and manage to make new paths for themselves, which is harder for men than for women. But when I find the ones that are doing it, I see strengths that have no name.
It's so interesting, Betty, that you, when I got to the end of the book, right at the very, very end of the book, I thought to myself, something's happened here. This intellectual odyssey that Betty Friedan has experienced from the Feminine Mystique on through your more humanistic approach to feminism, or your more humanistic approach to the relationship between the sexes, and now to this point, you say, the very end, I recognized my own compelling need now to transcend the war between the sexes, the no-win battles of women as a whole sex, oppressed victims, against men as a whole sex, the oppressors. And I find it extraordinarily ironic that the one battle, not you haven't given up on, hardly, you gave birth to it, but the one battle you found more frustrating than you believe you will find this battle against what we've always accepted as the dread end of life. You seem to have concluded that it was harder to deal with the war between the sexes than the war against the end of our lives.
Oh, I don't know. It's apples and fish, or you can't compare it. I think writing the book was harder. Writing myself. In the course of the 10 years that it took me to write The Fountain of Age, I went through a kind of transformation, a metamorphosis. I now know how much more liberated I feel than I did
After
10
the
years
Feminine
ago.
Mystique?
And that is why, because in this new period of life I'm in, and that is why I feel that The Fountain of Age may be as liberating to men and women in its way as the Feminine Mystique was 30 years ago. That The Fountain of Age will change the way men and women feel about themselves growing older, think about themselves growing older, take away that obsessive dread and denial of age, and lead to new surprising realizations. And the other business, part of my own evolution is an embrace of the women's movement for all it has been, because it has been a marvelous liberating force for women, and I am very proud of the fact that I was able, in the Feminine Mystique and in my early years as starting the organizations and leading some of them, that I was able to play this role in the women's movement. And I was, heard by attacks when I wrote The Second Stage, which I had to write because I felt that there were certain no-win battles and very dangerous distractions and diversions here. And that was painful for me, but I had to do it. But now I'm beyond it, and I'm in another period, and maybe I'm experiencing some wisdom, who knows?
Well, now, you seem to be saying that the battle against ageism is much more likely to be won, much less likely to frustrate you, than the battle against sexism was.
Well, it's not just a battle against ageism. I mean, we do, see, we now, who are in our 60s, 70s, and more, we are the pioneers of a new kind of age. And right behind us are the baby boomers, who are now, having, they thought you can't trust anyone over 30, and 40 was a pretty trauma, but now they're facing 50. And they're this huge, bulging market. And, the women have broken through the feminine mystique, and the men have helped take up care of the children in ways that, that they never did before. And they're poised behind us with enormous power. And they're, one of the news magazines a year ago showed a cover with a youngish-looking man with a gray hair saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe it, I'm going to be 50. And the younger people that have been reading my book, and it's amazing how, young men and women, they come up to me and they say, "Oh, I'm going to send my book to your book to my mother or my father," and then they start talking to me what's in the book, and they say, I said, "Well, you're so young. Did you like, you really read it?" He goes, "Oh, yes. It's gotten me over my own dread of age." Well, I would have thought this person was so young, she or he wouldn't have had the dread of age yet. But it's interesting. Now, these baby boomers behind us who are not babies anymore, I think they're going to be moving into this new territory. And it will be the social revolution of the turn of the century. Just as the youth movement in the 60s, the songs, the Beatles, the new music, and then, everybody was, so obsessed with the 18 to 39 market, because they were the big bulge. Now, the turn of the century, our generation and those coming into age behind us, we will be, the cutting edge, and the music, and the songs, and the values in society. But it wouldn't be just it's not going to be, it seems to me, a movement of older people against young. It's not a polarizing thing. You say the battle against ageism, like the battle against sexism. It's larger than that.
Yeah, but Betty, let me ask you about the question of resources. Later today, Dan Callahan will sit at this table, and we'll talk about the aging population and the resources we have.
Dan wants to say that someone at a certain age can no longer get health care.
Don't put words into his mouth.
I don't agree with him on that.
But wait a minute, let me ask you about the resources that are needed to support the kind of generation you're talking about.
No, you are buying the dreary, dread mystique of age in a way that tries to make older people the scapegoat for the crisis of health care that is our whole society, or the economic crisis of our society. And that is wrong. Older people tend to be healthier than younger people. They need hospitalization less, and the idea that this is an enormous costly burden on society comes solely from the prescribing by doctors of high-tech procedures, keep people and give people a day or an hour or a month more of painful life when they are in a terminal state that can't be cured, and when the thrust of healthcare should not be the just diagnose esoteric symptom and cure what can't be cured, but to keep people functioning in a human way in the community as long as possible, not these costly nursing homes that are a sentence to worse than death, not these unnecessary and profitable high-tech procedures that the insurance companies, will pay for and profit by, but the doctors will profit by, or the hospitals profit by. But our Medicare, our health insurance doesn't even cover the non-medical measures that can keep people going in their community so they don't need nursing homes.
Okay, now if I were my district attorney's son, I could say, strike from the record my mention of Dan Callahan and what it has.
Well, no, but there's something that Dan does that's dangerous. I mean, and that I worry about. That kind of say that certain, I have some chapters that I think are pretty important on healthcare age. I don't want to define people or define ourselves in age only as objects of healthcare, just only as objects of medical care and cure and all that, which is what the age mystique does. But you have to face the realities that you do need healthcare. But a healthcare that is based on sort of the youthful model of medicine isn't good for people now either. I mean, you don't want, people, if the doctors are locked into the age mystique. So a woman or the man comes in with a real problem, real complaint, say, well, that's just age. So they don't do anything about it. Or they prescribe all these drugs, and to sedate you, and then the drugs themselves create the problem. But instead of looking at the whole person you are and see what's happening to you, a lot of the even some of the supposed symptoms of senility, but a lot of the even physiological complaints that some older people do have come from depression. And there's every reason, given the way society treats older people now, for people to be depressed in age. It takes a real strong person who's able to get angry and is a truth teller and doesn't buy a lot of that to make it to the vital age, to really partake of the fountain of age the way our society is now. But don't make older people the scapegoat for the health crisis caused by the profiteering on drugs and the high-tech procedures. There's got to be a revolution in medicine. And there's got to be a way of caring for older people in terms of the people they are, keeping them functioning in the community, and not profiting by these high-tech, very terminal things when there is no possibility of healthy life. But that does not mean what Daniel Callahan says, you don't let anybody over 65 have certain kind of necessary operation or whatever. It shouldn't be rationed that way. It should be rationed in terms of possibility for human functioning life.
I was thinking early this morning that you never got onto the environmental bandwagon. But
I support it. How much energy does a person have?
No, I understand. But beyond that, you have incredibly helped create and then rode the crest, and now perhaps are riding the crest again. You're a very timely person, because when you wrote The Feminine Mystique, you helped create and then led a movement. And it seems quite clear that the Fountain of Age here today comes at a time when so many people have a felt need to do exactly what it is that you're doing.
Well, that's mysterious, isn't it?
No, mysterious. Come on.
But what I mean is that for me it is. I consider myself incredibly blessed that I was somehow able to put together the experiences of my life and the training I had as a journalist and as a psychologist, because that was my original training, to break through the feminine mystique, and then somehow to take the serendipity and that I responded to the need and helped organize the women's movement. And I think it's mysterious in a way, too, that I was able to do that again and take what I'd learned in feminism and in breaking through the feminine mystique and apply it to this new place in life, despite my own denial, which I had to break through in order to write The Fountain of Age.
Now, 30 years ago, you didn't anticipate the kinds of problems that would surface with feminism.
Well, no, 30 years ago, when I was, say, finishing The Feminine Mystique, or if it had just come out, like when you and I first met, I would never have been able to predict, I wouldn't have been grandiose enough to be able to even conceive of the enormity of the women's movement and what it accomplished.
Or the problems that accompanied it?
But those are not important. The important thing is the women's movement and the way we did break through the feminine mystique and the way women did move into society. And that's not guaranteed yet, even. I worry that women, that there may be a move. I remember when I was a child during the Depression, married women weren't allowed to take jobs as teachers. The downsizing of jobs, if there is no innovative thinking on the part of industry, government, that sooner or later there's going to be an attempt to try to make women go home again. It's already happening in some ways. Already in the elimination of 14 million jobs that people between, have been holding, the people from their late 30s into their 50s, those jobs will never come back again, and the people that had those jobs have been replaced by younger people that are, they have to pay less to, and those people may not ever be able to get that kind of job again, and more of them are women than men.
Okay, 30 seconds. Do you anticipate that the search for the fountain of age is going to experience the same incredible surge that feminism did?
It looks as if it is putting into words what people needed to be able to name their new place. And that it may lead to some kind of movement. I could no more say now than I could 30 years ago, have predicted the scope of the women's movement. But I don't think it will be like the women's movement. I don't think it will be older people against young. And I don't think the women's movement was that way either.
I thank Betty Friedan at that point, and the audience too. Saying then as I do now, I hope you'll join us again next time. For transcripts, please send $4 in check or money order to the Open Mind, P.O. Box 7977, FDR Station, New York, New York 10150. Meanwhile, as another old friend used to say, good night and good luck. Continuing production of The Open Mind has been made possible by grants from the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation, the Bluestein Family Foundation, the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, Carnegie Corporation of New York, the Russell Sage Foundation, the Malkin Fund, May and Samuel Rudin Family Foundation, the Center for Educational Outreach and Innovation at Teachers College, Columbia University, and from the corporate community, Mutual of America.